post, but Matt in the youth group corrected me very quickly. But anyway, this is what I tweeted. Don't let anger lock you out, rob you of your blessing, poison your spirit, and destroy your joy. So let's read that together. I'm going to take the white words, and you're going to take the black words. Are you ready? Don't let you out, your poison spirit, destroy joy. Let's flip it. You got the white letters. Go ahead. Anger lock, rob you of your and your. Now, if you think anger does that, hear me. Unforgiveness does it 10 times over. It will tear you to shreds. Forgive. It liberates you. Liberates you. Now, just as there are people who seem to do right with wrong motives, such as Absalom, oh, you don't have anybody to hear your case. Don't kneel before me. Stand up. What he was doing wasn't wrong, but his motive was wrong. Actually, I think what he did was wrong, but I won't be his judge. There are those who appear to do wrong with right motive. And strangely enough, all indications are this. Read this with me because it's the heart of the sermon. God excuses, come on, what appears to others to be wrong because their cause was right and their motive was pure. So let's look at this illustration. You've been standing for a while. Let's stand, shall we? And turn to the book of Joshua, which is the 6th book in the Bible. For some reason or other, I kept saying 5th book in the Bible last service, and I can't tell you the number of people who corrected their pastor and enjoyed every moment of it. First 5 is the Pentateuch, and then we have Joshua. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies out from Shittim. Please pronounce the word correctly. There is another pronunciation, but that is not the one we want to use. For years, I always used the wrong pronunciation. And one day, I was just called Shittim. And then one day, and I thought that's how you said it. I said it in the pulpit forever. So then one day I'm listening to the Bible on CD and the guy says Shittim. And I thought, oh, that sounds so much better. And it is. All right. So then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and they entered the house of the prostitute named Rahab, and they stayed there. And the king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab. Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. L-I-E. Keep reading. Go after them. You may catch up with them. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, come on, the gate was shut. Now, did Rahab tell the truth? No. Oh, that was weak. Did Rahab tell the truth? No, she did not. Was her cause and motive right before God? Yes. How can you say that? She lied. How in the world could her motive be right before God? You want to see it? Turn with me to the book of faith, the faith chapter, Hebrews chapter 11, and look at what we read. By faith, come on, read it with me. The prostitute Rahab because she welcomed the spies. I love the way Young's literal translation puts it. He says, because she received the spies with peace. Do you remember the announcement of the angels? Peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Peace. Peace is that reconciliation between God and man. It's what the righteousness that makes us what we could never be outside of Christ. So because her cause and because her motive was right, to God, it was an act of faith. And hence he honors it. Look, it says, she was not killed, if you can finish it, with those who were disobedient. See, God sees cause and motive when it's in his behalf as an act of faith. Just as difficult as it is for us to understand, all indications are cause and motive is an action of faith, and it trumps the lie. As hard as that is for us to understand. And secondly, God searches the heart to see if it is favorable towards him. And Rahab's heart was searched and found favorable. You may be seated. Could it be that when God searched the heart of this church at Ephesus, you following me? Stay with me. Could it be that when God searched this church, the heart of this church at Ephesus, he said, you've lost your first love. Everything that you're doing that appears to be right, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You're doing it for the name on your church. You're doing it for your own fame. You're doing it for your own glory. And I have this against you. Joyce Meyer says this: motives reveal why we do what we do, which is actually more important to God than what we're doing. Profound. Motives reveal what we do, why we do what we do, which is actually more important to God than what we're doing. Francois de la Rochefoucauld. Kind of proud of that I could even say it. Now, it's probably totally wrong, but it sounded good. He was a 17th century French philosopher. He says this: we would frequently be ashamed of our good deeds. Come on, finish it. How scary. How true. That we would frequently be ashamed of all of our good deeds if people saw all the motives that produced them. You know, since last week, I seriously damaged my reputation as an ideal husband. I thought I would add a little veracity to that this week. I'm going to pick on my wife next week, but we were living in Pittman on Seneca and Broad, and for whatever the reason, we had decided to take out a home equity. I can't recall the reason, but we were going to take out a home equity loan, and we needed $7,500. Now, unbeknown to my wife, I had been looking at motorcycles. So I'm thinking, okay, she gives me a little pocket money every week, and, you know, I make some money on funerals, and I make some money on weddings, and I'm thinking, now if I took that, what I've had saved, and I had just a little extra, I could buy my bike. So I said to Cheryl, honey, I think we should borrow $10,000. And she said, why do we need $10,000? We only need $7,500. I said, well, you know, you should always have a cushion. You never know what you need. It always costs more than what you think it's going to cost. So I persuaded my wife to say that we could borrow the $10,000, which gave me a little extra money. So I don't say anything to her. It's about 2 weeks later. And I said to Cheryl, you know, honey, I think I'd like to buy a motorcycle. And she says, where are you going to get the money? And I said, well, I've been putting away pocket money, 40 years worth. No, been putting away pocket money, and I put away wedding money from funerals and weddings. And I paused and I said, and we have that little extra money from the loan. Need I say anything else? You know how when righteousness walks in the room, it doesn't need to say a word. You just crawl underneath your sin. But before you throw me under the bus, how many times have we given words of praise to find favor? Wrong motive. How many times have we spoken flattering words looking for something in return? Now, what we're looking for may not be wrong, but the reason for which we're looking for it is. How many times have we done a benevolent deed for the wrong reason? Remember Governor Felix, and he kept calling St. Paul to come in, and he would discuss it with him. And he said he would call for an audience with him over and over again. And then it says, because he had hoped that the apostle would give him money. In Proverbs, we read this: a bribe blinds those who see clearly. Now look at this. Read it with me. And it twists the words of the righteous. Doesn't say it corrupts their hearts, but it says it twists the words of the righteous. Do you know Felix never released the Apostle Paul? He could have. He had the power. But money corrupted. His whole reign, by the way, was laced with corruption. And it was all centered in the bribe. I've been pastoring this church for 31 years. From our very first year in the Pittman Masonic Club building, people gave Satan. And I'm not saying the person was of Satan, just like Peter. He said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Peter wasn't Satan, but his thinking was satanic. It wasn't of God. People have come and put large sums of money into the offering plate, making sure I knew it was them, and then subtly requested for a position in the church. I remember a family. They gave 400 hours a week. That was huge then. And then another 1,200 hours on top of that every month. And the wife would say, my husband's on the school board, but he really liked to be on the board of the church. I never put him on the board of the church. And they left. I remember just a year ago. It was strange. But the ushers would bring me an envelope with a tithe check in it. And I refused to look in the envelope. I never once looked in the envelope. But the accounting department said, "Pastor, what this couple is giving is huge." And I thought, why are they sending me their tithe in an envelope? Me. Now listen. There are people who hand me checks, and we celebrate. For instance, let's say somebody is capable of giving $50 a week, and they give $50 a week. And then all of a sudden, they want to give to the building fund, and something happens. There's an inheritance. There's a settlement. And they come by, and they give me a $2,000 check, and they say, "Pastor, I'm so excited. I've been wanting to give to the building fund, and God answered my prayer." That's altogether different. And I refused to take the check. And I said to myself, guaranteed, this family's going to leave. It was about 3-4 months later after the checks had been handed. And I said to the accounting office, "So tell me, that family that was giving that large amount of money, they still here?" They said no. And I knew it. When this church began, April 10th, 1982, I made a pact with God that no amount of money or talent was going to buy a position in this church. Faithfulness, integrity, and honesty would. So I have to pray every day. I mean daily. Search my heart, O God,